So welcome everyone to another edition of ALN Thursday at 3. We're going to be looking at the National Institute of Building Sciences Building Innovation Conference, specifically the Brains and Bytes Digital Twin Workshop. And today we've got Roger Grant and Kimon as anchors, but we also have other participants today, Jay Klein, also from National Institute of Building Sciences, and Scott McClure, an enterprise architect with Image Matters. He focuses on Air Force science, and Marc Goldman, the director of the AEC industry for ESRI. And we'd like to thank our patron sponsors, including Jacobs, Mantech, ABS Quality Evaluations, CGI, and Onuma, and all of our organizational members. And before we get started on the program, I want to say that this is the first in a series of programs. We're going to have another event on May 16 where we dig into use cases and have a presentation and demonstration on that. And this is all leading up to the actual Building Innovation Conference in Washington, D.C., where the Bytes and Brains and Bytes Digital Twin AI Workshop will have a form of conclusion in a web broadcast from the conference. And then in June, we're going to be continuing with development of what is unveiled during the workshops and demonstrations. So we appreciate Kimon and Onuma for helping us facilitate those. But I'd like to start with talking with Roger Grant. Roger, welcome back to ALN Thursday at 3.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
And the neat thing about this Building Innovations Conference is it's the 50th anniversary of the National Institute of Building Sciences. And you haven't been there for 50 years, but
sometimes it feels like it, but no.
Can you tell a bit about your background at NIBS?
Yeah, sure. Well, NIBS was created in 1974 and by the U.S. Congress. So this is our 50th anniversary this year. The genesis of NIBS creation, some of us were around back in those days, not all of us, but in the late 60s, early 70s, there was actually a war on poverty and housing crisis taking place, and lots of discussion around that. It was in the Johnson administration. The challenges of developing housing stock quickly were leading to some concerns about how buildings were built and the codes and standards that were used to create housing and other kinds of buildings quickly and responsibly. And the Congress ultimately decided that there was a need for an organization that could work with the public and the private sector together to help address the problems of our built infrastructure and how to do things responsibly, use science and technology, and bring those elements to bear on the building process. So, here we are 50 years later, and a lot of things have changed, a lot of things have advanced, but the challenges that we face in how we create our built environment to address problems, housing continues to be a challenge, and even more so in some ways today. There's other challenges that we face with security of buildings and the built infrastructure, with safety from natural hazard events or man-made hazard events, with dealing with climate and other unplanned events like that, and how to respond and react to those, where we need building science and building sciences even more. And it is National Institute of Building Sciences, as Earl Kennett pointed out to me several years ago when I said the National Institute of Building Science, or somebody did, there's more than one science around the building process that we need to support. And a lot of NIBS work has been around looking at the building and looking at buildings in the built environment holistically. NIBS has something called the Whole Building Design Guide that gets millions of hits on a monthly basis from people looking for information about building science and how to utilize it. And the whole premise of it is around the definition of high performance buildings, that you don't look at any one aspect of a building or a piece of a built infrastructure in isolation. You know, if you're, I was involved in a lot of work for DHS and Department of Homeland Security, and they were real interested in anti-terrorism technologies and how to make buildings more secure. But they also realized that you can't stiffen the exterior of the building without considering the impact of doing that on energy use. You know, if you put a lot of steel in the outside of a building, it will make it more secure, but it will also transfer heat and cold a lot more than you want. So there's trade-offs in any utilization of technology, and it requires a scientific approach to evaluating those things. And the other thing that it really does require is a collaborative approach. You know, a lot of the, I mean, our public buildings are owned by our state and federal governments, and they have a set of approaches and requirements, but they really need to work with and utilize specialists in the private sector to address the challenges that they have. And NIBS has had a unique position in that aspect. There's a lot of other organizations that are part of the federal government that help to address performance in our built infrastructure, the National Academies of Science, Federal Facility Council, for example, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology, for example, do a lot of work in building science, but they tend to do studies that are research related, and NIBS is unique in bringing together consultants from the private sector to work with government to do projects that address a specific problem around implementation. So there's some very interesting and practical things that NIBS helps to facilitate. You know, I think that uniqueness is a challenge and an opportunity for NIBS. Getting the word out and using that model has led us to do a lot of different things for a lot of different agencies in the federal government, not so much at the state and local level, although I think there's lots of opportunities there as well for this model to thrive. And certainly we see a lot of challenges there. And our session here on the built environment and the BIM storm to use AI and digital twins is really trying to continue that trend to explore where we can apply technology to help improve the way our facilities are operated and how efficient and effective they are and safe and secure they are, and have as little impact as possible on the environment. So this is exciting to be forging into this new direction, working with my colleagues here that are helping us to do that. Kimon's been a long-time collaborator. We really appreciate our relationship with the Asset Leadership Network and ability to focus on assets, and others here with us. Jay, colleague at NIBS, and works a lot with me on specific projects for federal agencies. In particular, our State Department, we're doing a lot of work with on their overseas facilities. We've worked a lot with Scott recently on the definition of digital twins and a work we're about to release on how digital twins and BIM work together. And Marc Goldman's been a part of that. And Marc and I have been colleagues for a number of years in this pursuit of applying technology to help address challenges in the built environment. So it's great to be here with this group and great to talk about this and use NIBS' role in conjunction with the ALN to help, ultimately help make our federal government and other government entities and the assets that we enjoy as citizens of our country better and more productive. So um, thank you,
Great.
Mike, for letting me say a few words.
Excellent. Thank you, Roger. And Jay, will you talk a little bit about the upcoming Building Innovations Conference? Building Innovation, it's singular. You're on
Sure.
mute. Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. Roger, I guess, prefaced a little bit with our mission there, and I think this conference goes right in line with that mission to bring people together from unique backgrounds and a diverse and comprehensive set of backgrounds. I think this conference, every year I seem to meet someone completely new in a completely different area of the industry, whether it's physical security last year or agency representatives or software vendors, standards developers. It seems to be one from everywhere at this event. So I always get a lot of appreciation from meeting folks there, but also presenting as well on the occasions that I do get the chance to do that. I was going to share the screen there, but
1 second, let me
website,
make you co-host.
sure.
That would be great. We would really appreciate you that.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think this is the best resource. We can provide a link to this if we don't have it already, but buildinginnovation.org is pretty easy to find. The event itself is in about 3 weeks. I believe there's still space to sign up, although it is a limited event. There's several tracks. I know that we have oh, here we go. They're listed over here. So technology is, I think, what most of us here on this call is focused on, but we also have building performance and sustainability, resilience, and then we have a few general sessions. So those are the 3 tracks. Several sessions on AI that I know we're going to link directly into this Brains and Bytes session at the end of the week, which is here 12:30 to 2 o'clock on Friday. And we will attempt to wrap up a lot of the presentation content into something digestible and collaborative in just an hour and a half. I think Kimon's got his work cut out for him there. But,
Well, that's part of the reason
exciting.
why the Asset Leadership Network is pitching in with this program, the program on the 16th, and willing to facilitate activities in June, because it's never about that 90 minutes. That's a demonstration of capability. And we want to continue working with people because you can't solve all the problems of the world in 90 minutes. You're absolutely right, Jay.
Yeah, and I think to that end, this is actually the third installation of our work on this topic. We talked about it at BI last year, and we had a webinar back in January, and we're expecting to continue on NIBS side as well to keep going with this. So it's a good point, Mike. There's no one and done to any of these things that any of us work on, as we well know. It's a journey, there's no destination we're going to arrive in and then say, oh, we've got it all sorted out. So,
and then we've got a very large federal audience. Can you explain a little bit about how NIBS works with federal agencies?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. NIBS works closely with a number of federal agencies, probably pretty much every federal agency we've worked with in one way, shape, or form or another. NIBS in the enabling legislation of NIBS, we were given the opportunity, or we were designated that federal agencies could work directly with NIBS to put together teams to address challenges. In other words, we can do projects for federal agencies without having to compete directly for those. I mean, obviously, we need to be competitive and we need to provide what they're looking for, but we can bring together teams and contract directly with federal agencies. And so we do a lot of that with different agencies. Currently doing a lot of work, as I mentioned, with Department of State Overseas Building Operations on their BIM program. We have an ongoing activity with the Federal Emergency Management Agency to operate the Building Seismic Safety Council and develop the National Earthquake Hazard Prevention Programs criteria that ultimately become the design standards in ASCE 7, American Society of Civil Engineers Standard 7 for structural performance of facilities. That's a longstanding NIBS effort. We're also currently working quite a bit with our General Services Administration on the carbon reduction efforts they have going on how to measure the cost impacts of those activities, and also doing post-occupancy evaluations for them. So those are some examples with the Corps of Engineers. We support them in looking at project effectiveness and how to operate projects. And then we also bring together a number of the agencies in different activities that we do in our councils and committees. We have a lot of membership from federal agencies, and the goal of those efforts is to take the work that we do on projects and bring it to the public. And this is beneficial to the public, but it's also beneficial to the agencies, because to the extent that they can get the word out about things that they have helped develop together with us, that can help upskill the workforce and provide them a better pool of consultants and workers to do their activities for them, and also in the development of standards and that they can utilize in their work. And if the private sector is using those, it makes things better and more effective for them. So our national BIM standard and our national CAD standard are a couple examples of efforts along those lines that federal agency representatives work with us to develop, and which in large part come from components of them come from work we do on projects for the agencies.
And you have done joint projects with multiple agencies, such as the Defense Health Services and the VA. The ALN gave an impact award to NIBS and all the people involved in that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was a joint project between Defense Health and VA, and it had to do with the merging of the military health systems together. And with Kimon's help, in fact, we developed systems for better identifying the requirements for medical facilities and how to express those and how to open that up and make it available as data, and also give the agencies the ability to do test fitting of their requirements and make sure that they were effective and better able to be implemented and used. We used BIM to help prove that, and then made all of that material available. And so that improved efficiency and effectiveness. And we've been able to, I guess, through a continuum of work that we've done with Kimon between VA, we've applied many of those principles on to work with Department of State, and also shared it with other agencies in work we do regularly to communicate with a group of agencies that are developing building information management practices and procedures.
And it kind of feeds into what's happening with brains and bits. Jay, you're compared to Roger, you're relatively new with NIBS. Do you see this legacy of building on and incorporating what's come before in the work that you're involved with?
Oh yeah, Roger makes it easy, and Kimon, so no doubts there. I mean, just speaking to one of the projects, the BIM program, which is most of my day right now, at OBO, that project has been long-standing. I mean, BIM standards were supposedly formalized by saying we want to BIM right back in 2008, but Roger and NIBS and Kimon started more development on that program in 2015, 16, 17, and it's only been increasing since. So the momentum's already been created, I think, by NIBS in general, that same fashion in a lot of other programs. So for me, it feels easy. So I just have to step in and do good work, continue to think ahead, talk with the right people, get the right input from other innovators like Scott, yourself, Mark, others on this call, and part of the councils at NIBS. And I don't think there's any question that things will go another 50 years.
Oh, that's great. So speaking of the work you do, I know both you and Roger have to go, but this is the time of the presentation when we were going to turn things over to Kimon anyway. But if Roger, you want to make any closing remarks?
Oh, yeah, sure. I really like to invite people to join us at BI. We've got a lot of great sessions, as Jay pointed out. We'll be there. It'd be great to meet people in person. I think NIBS offers some really good pricing for federal agency people to come and join us. So that's another incentive. We really like to get our federal partners there. I mean, I think that's really how we work with, and the position we strive for is to be partners with the federal agencies and help them to improve what they're doing, and then bring that to the public, the private sector, to be able to benefit from those things. So keeping that going, having Jay pick it up and carry it forward, and getting the new ideas of people from all different areas and levels of experience and practice is really important. So we'd like to see that continue to happen, and I think BI is a good place for that to be fostered further.
Well, the Asset Leadership Network is very honored to be involved in anything with the National Institute of Building Sciences. So thank you. We look forward to this upcoming event and anything else in the future that we might be able to do to mutually benefit each other and the federal government and the country and the world, for that matter.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
So let's shift over to Kimon. And as I do that, I am going to say that Marty Rowland, an ALN Senior Fellow, is mentioning that the American Journal of Economics and Sociology has an open call for asset management papers, and we can talk about the possibilities there. But thanks again for joining us, and things over to Kimon.
Yeah, and maybe before Roger and Jay leave, just real quickly, if we're working off of the NIBS and sciences theme, last year, as Roger mentioned, we had sessions at NIBS relating to AI and digital twins, and we're kind of carrying on from that this year. So that's the passing the baton as they step out now. Thanks, Roger and Jay. You can stick around if you want, but
stick around for a few. Come on, I just want to hear you get started off on.
Make sure I say the right things, right?
I have to jump out.
Yeah, I'll say thanks now and stick on a few more minutes, but that way I can jump out silently. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Yeah. And one theme from both Jay and Roger is that we really experimented last year too with quite a bit. Obviously, there's a lot of science-based approaches and using standards and everything, which we're pushing forward with. But then as AI and digital twins come on board, it's really about experimenting and see where we can take this, or where we shouldn't take it too. So that's what this is all about. Mike, is it okay if I take off? Is there anything else you'd like to say before I just kind of start on this? I guess you're on mute, so I'm talking.
Go right ahead. Yes, you're fine.
Okay.
Kimon.
All right, maybe we'll introduce, we already talked about Scott and Mark that are going to be online. They're already online here and they're going to be speaking to this as well. But I want to acknowledge that actually all of us have been involved in some way or another with the Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee at NIBS. Scott is the chair and also the lead of what we call the public perception lead. And Mark is the vice chair of the Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee, and I'm involved as a data framework lead on the same subcommittee. So we've been working very closely, and Roger and Jay have been jumping in and out and giving comments and input as well too. So a lot of the work that you see here is going to be centered around that. But to give a kind of an overview of BIMstorm for those that have not, I won't spend a lot of time here, but there's a BIMstorm site, which I'll put in the chat for those that have not seen it. Maybe Mike, you can do that as I'm going through here. It's bimstorm.com. It's been going on for 17 years. And actually the very first BIMstorm that we had in the US was through NIBS 17 years ago. And we had live sessions, and it's always about workshops and testing things out. And as Roger mentioned, there's a lot of work with federal agencies and owners that a lot of it we can't share, but the approaches and the standards have been central to all of this, really. How do we standardize and make this work? For example, using BIM standards and COBE, and it's been going on for many years around that. But the workshops here for Brains and Bytes, which if we jump in here, there's all the other BIMstorms are listed here as well too. But this particular session's interesting because it's going to be at the NIBS BI conference, as we mentioned, on the week of May 22nd to the 24th. It's the last session of the conference, and it's the only one that's going to have a virtual option as well too, the only session in the conference, because we're going to be looking at the other sessions and also summarizing them in the BIMstorm. So if you want to join, we'd love for you to be there in person, but if you can't, wherever you are in the world, there's a Zoom invite, and on the BIMstorm site under the Brains and Bytes, there's the schedule of upcoming events like Mike mentioned. So we're going to have other events throughout, and I think this list is going to continue to grow because it's not just about a presentation. It is a workshop, and we started to post a lot of the information on the BIMstorm site itself. Along with that, if you sign up at the very bottom here on the BIMstorm site, sign up here and how you would like to participate. You can participate just by watching, but if you want to jump in and submit a use case, for example, if you have some examples of solutions, we'd love to see them. And once you sign up, get access to this mural. So this is a mural. If I zoom way out here, you'll see there's a lot of material, but there's a lot of blank space too, because we're starting to park some of the workshops in here. So for example, if we go into this section here, this is the last year's session that Roger, Jay, and I had about the intersection of AI and building sciences, science fiction to building science, basically. And we have posted some of the slides here. There's a full link to the recording of that as well. And we're encouraging other technology-related sessions. We started to interact with some of them. This is from the BI sessions, and they're posting, for example, Paul Doherty yesterday started posting some of his slides here. And the intent is to get a flavor of what's going on, interact with them at the session, and then capture input and use cases and connections between the different presentations. So if I start at the very top, it's Brains and Bytes. Brains comes first because we think humans are more important than AI still, at least for now. And there's information about how to connect. So we're using the mural, we have even a chat GPT chatbot that actually can answer questions about this BIMstorm. We have the bimstorm.com site, and we have the NIBS site as well. The overall schedule, and today's event is right here, and we're going to have other events throughout. And then today's session, we have a section called Mythbusters, which Scott McClure is going to lead, still being worked on. And then we have a section on public perception. Now, I just want to introduce that concept, and Scott, if you can jump in, but we thought because of the complexity of the discussion about digital twins and AI, there's a lot of myths and public perception that drives a lot of this, and it's part of the position paper that is going to be released, I think, at the BI session. That's the plan so far. But Scott, as the chair of this Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee. Maybe you can kind of walk us through a bit of what you're thinking here.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Mike, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and get the host ability to do the screen share as well. Meanwhile, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. My role as the chair on the subcommittee is to kind of figure out how the world of BIM and digital twin relate to each other, and ensure that the experts that are on the team, the members of the subcommittee itself, are defining the relationship in a way that is relevant to the type of work that we do on an everyday basis. I am go. Copy that. I see it. So I'm pleased, absolutely pleased to be working with Kimon and Marc and Zara, rest of the members themselves. Unfortunately, they can't all be here today. I do want to say Marc is also, I believe, Marc, you're a co-chair on the AECO work group at the Digital Twin Consortium. Is that right? I'm going to take that silence as a yes. I might be off there, but
I'm pretty sure you're right there, Scott.
Yeah. So we have quite a breadth of individuals. I don't think I'm going to be covering the details on all of this today. I will be jumping back into the Mythbusters and starting after I kind of introduce the subcommittee just a little bit. But regarding the types of members that we have, the roles that they play in the midst of our industry, you can tell that these folks have experience in AECO in one way or another, and are engaged on the digital twin question. What is digital twin in relation to BIM and the AECO industry? Yes, I'll come back to this at the very end of this. But jumping up through Mythbusters, I'm assuming that my screen is sharing. Can I get confirmation on that?
Yes, you are.
Great. This is open, and it's going to largely stay open like this for now, because when we get into the actual working session, we want to load out the types of myths that people are seeing. So this is just kind of seeding the conversation. And the question will be kind of, when it comes to public perception, and a good lead into public perception is, what are the myths that are out there that are really confusing the communication, confusing the messaging, breaking our conversations into sometimes 2 or 3 conversations all in the same space, so that we're talking past each other. So we want to kind of tackle that, and example that I think is interesting here in this context is that AI is not verifiable. How much of a myth is that question? What is the genesis of the information that AI is building off of? There's questions at MIT of something called mechanistic interpretability, for example, that suggests that maybe it is verifiable, or maybe you can kind of determine the veracity of a hallucination in that regard. So we really kind of want to tackle this and see where everybody's at. Consider it sort of a survey, also a thought-provoking conversation starter, perhaps. What we have here is an image of Icarus that flew too close to the sun. And I think it's a good segue here that when you have people who become familiar with the idea of digital twin, or maybe they're new entrants into the AECO community, perhaps they're just now learning about BIM, or maybe they've been aware of construction practices and architectural engineering practices, or they're an operator, but they've been at the high level, strategic level. So the details of these different, very specific things are kind of nuanced to them. They don't see it; it's opaque, and so they get this idea in their mind of what it is. Digital twin, a virtual representation of a physical asset. I know what that is. Man, here's all the million things that we can be doing with it, and in their mind, they get a target, a goal of flying to the sun. And through a lot of confusion and chaos, what we've seen is that their initial perception, which drives their opinions and has an impact on the decisions they make within their companies, can really kind of make them crash pretty hard when their wings begin to melt. So what we'd like to do on that Friday at the Building Innovation Conference, unfortunately I won't be there, but I'll be in virtual attendance for the Brains and Bytes BIM Storm. afterwards is we're going to step through this public perception thing. The idea that I'm going to address right now is our general position. So the Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee has taken positions on mainly 4 different topic areas. Public perception is one of those topic areas. And in public perception, after about a year's worth of debate and dialogue, we came to the conclusion that effectively the public's perception is undervalued. And it's undervalued as an essential and influential part of BIM and digital twin as we try to integrate these two. So it's undervalued, and because it's undervalued, it hasn't been leveraged to try to bring BIM and digital twin together, at least not in a coherent and coordinated way. So we argue that public perception is undervalued, that it's not being used because it's undervalued. And yet, if we were to use it, the impact of addressing the public perception as far as coordinated and collaborative efforts can affect the transformation that the industry is going through right now. So if we take a step back and look at this often disregarded thing, the public, and say, what is the public's impact on our conversations? What is the public impact on technology adoption? We feel that we can help kind of guide the industry through this transformation more deliberatively, in a way that is perhaps more aligned with the ideal of what we would all hope for. So as we're building this out, now, Kimon, I don't know if we wanted to go through all of these, but I'm going to try to wrap up my time here unless you tell me otherwise. We would like to, we'll break out the logic of that position and explain why we came to that, give you an example, and then speak to the calls to action. Come on, I see your camera jumped on. I'll give you a chance really quick to jump in.
Yeah, no, this is great, Scott. And the intent is that we're going to have more in-depth workshops centered around this, and we're also going to be sharing more from the position paper. So this is a great, thank you very much for posting all this on the mural and get everybody's attention, basically. This is a teaser, basically. There's a lot more to come.
Yeah. Is there a way anybody can contribute myths, or how can they get involved, Scott?
Well, Kimon, if it's appropriate, I'm ready to paste the link to the mural board right now.
No, we're asking them to sign up on the BIMstorm site so we know who they are. But yeah, whoever signs up, we definitely want to get your input, and you can actually get access to the live mural as it's happening. It's pretty open, but we want to at least have kind of a list going, if that's okay.
Okay, if I could, Kimon, really quick,
yeah.
Marty is making some comments about the socioeconomic point that he mentioned before.
Go ahead.
And public perception. I definitely recognize, Marty, what you're saying, and it was something that I saw in your question, and I'm grateful that the conversation is starting to become prominent. And Zara is also pointing out that there will be a BI session here. I just want to emphasize right now before we move on, this position paper will cover topics including public perception, but going into data frameworks and use cases and execution, planning, et cetera. And so there will be more. We are, like Kimon said, hoping that the editorial process finishes by BI. We're right now in the sort of final stages of wrapping up all our, crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So with that, I think maybe that's appropriate. Kimon, off to you. Sorry if I took too long.
No, that's great. Thank you. So let's see. Let me take back the screen, I guess. Share screen. And since let's kind of pick up off of where you left here. So Scott, you presented here, and Marc's going to come up, and I just want to acknowledge Zara, who's also kind of listening in today, but will be participating more in the next sessions as well. And I'll speak to a little bit about that next as well. But Marc, one thing, and you're wearing a lot of different hats. You're an architect, you're with ESRI, and one thing that has been central to all the BIM storms, including our interaction with ESRI quite a bit actually over the years, is the concept of location and tying data to location and being able to make value out of that. And the digital twin and AI discussions also have a big element of that as well too. But would you like to talk a little bit more about the digital? Oh, it's up to you, really. The whole thing, whatever you want to cover. If you want to show anything too, that's fine. But
So Mark said he is there. We see him, but we haven't been able to hear him. Mark,
okay.
Mark, there's a little caret next to the microphone. And if you click on that, it gives you an option to pick a different microphone, and sometimes just changing from what microphone you have to the other option
Yeah,
allows you to hear us to hear you.
and if we don't get audio going, I could cover for Mark and come
Yeah,
back
why don't you
later.
go ahead and I'll kind of work with Mark through the chat to see if I
Yeah,
can.
okay. So maybe I'll work off of that theme of location and information. So one thing about digital twins, and this goes back to the Mythbusters that Scott talked about too.
How about
They
now? Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay.
I had my phone and my Zoom audio conflicting with each other. So I do need to, for the sake of all architects out there, do qualify. I studied architecture and engineering, built a house, did some work, but never actually became licensed. So I need to
good choice.
clarify that.
No, that's a good thing to say about yourself. You
Yeah,
can
I don't need the AIA chasing me down. But I do wear a lot of hats, and you know, one of the current hats that I'm working on, you touched on, Kimon, certainly the importance of location as it pertains to the built world, the importance of location certainly in the realm of digital twins. It's really a hot topic right now how BIM and GIS, which is location-based technology, are coming together in ways that they certainly never have before. You know, traditionally the idea was BIM was the inside of the building or the built structure, and GIS was the outside. But the blurring of those lines through example after example, and certainly around digital twins, I'm seeing new case studies, new examples, new customer implementations of BIM and GIS delivering digital twin capabilities and use cases literally on a daily basis. So it's exciting for this last year, as Scott mentioned, to be actively participating in the development of the position paper that will be, as we've said, likely released at BI. And a particular session that I'm working on with Zara, with Cindy Baldwin, who is very active with Building Smart US, a gentleman named Dan Feinberg, who is also active with the Digital Twin Consortium in the AECO organization, working group of DTC. We will be at BI in a session engaging with the audience, presenting briefly almost all of the positions, but then asking the audience to raise their hand and let us know which ones in our 60-minute session we should really dive into deeper, and use that as an opportunity to introduce the paper in more detail, discuss the positions that resonate with, you know, the 50 to 100 people who might be in our session, and just keep a conversation going beyond that. Like Scott said, that we've been having in our working groups. The 4 working groups have been absolutely wonderful, expressing opinions, ideas, pointing to articles, pointing to research, pointing to examples that have led to the 17 positions that are in the paper. But we're excited, like I said, myself, Cindy, Zara, and Dan, to use the session at BI to engage with an audience, to introduce the positions, and just keep a dialogue going, because this is a very dynamic topic, the place in which BIM and digital twins come together, where they separate, where they benefit each other, where they serve each other individual purposes, is really an interesting topic right now. And that's the session that I'll be most focused on at BI. And certainly there's an element of GIS sort of woven through this as well, because like I said, the lines between where BIM starts and ends and GIS and location capabilities start and end are certainly not hard edges anymore.
Yeah, and actually the whole digital twin angle and AI angle makes that type of information of location and data associated with it much more accessible. And actually ESRI has been, through Jack Dangermond, and started this years ago, right, about location and making it easier to use. And now from a public's perspective, everybody expects to be able to find a location on their phone and do stuff with it. So we need to bring that.
Dangermond being the founder of ESRI.
That's right. Yeah.
founder of ESRI 55 years ago, still the president and CEO of the company and the visionary behind the concepts of GIS. And yeah, we've become we expect now to have location-based information in so many things that we do, whether it's GPS-enabled directions, or where's the closest store that has the thing I'm looking for, or weather data based in our particular location. We expect that in our day-to-day sort of non-professional life. And then when we get into a professional environment, the importance of location starts to become more, the expectation is high as well, that as we're doing our construction work, our design work, our planning work, understanding context of our location is at a higher level of expectation than I think it's ever been, in part because of the handheld devices that are now so location enabled and location powered and delivering us location information.
Definitely. That's actually a good segue into this diagram, just that we split up the BIM storm into kind of 8 big topics, starting from the brains. Brains is number 1, like I mentioned. Then there's Bytes and AI related to that. Then there's different apps and solutions that kind of use all this. Then there's a digital twins, that systems talking to each other. Then from the asset and asset management perspective, use cases, we're working with Zara and John Messner from Penn State, who will be presenting. Zara is going to jump on in a future session. And then just the industry connections and orgs being all the different groups, including ALN. And weaving that all together, it seems like it's incredibly complex, but the technologies there is one theme, is that if the technology and the user interface and the use case is very clear, then the end user does not have to be worried with the complexity of everything underneath it. So for example, when I call up an Uber, I don't have to understand how to use satellites to find my location. It basically finds me and I can purchase it, and the financial system is already in place. So we're saying those kind of systems of system approaches and digital twins, which is where a lot of the buildup is starting to happen here in this segment too, is if we have use cases. So for example, Zara and John Messner from Penn State, we are developing use cases of what do we want to accomplish? We want to be able to find assets and have sensors associated with them. Okay, how do we classify and describe them? We have templates that are being built to capture the standards that are being used, what the description of the use cases, what the inputs and outputs, and we're numbering these 1 through whatever. And we invite others to submit their use cases as well too. That's one of the easiest places to actually jump in, is say, well, I have a use case, here are 3 bullet points. How do we actually make this happen? And then others that are participating can fill it in more. So zooming back a little bit here, the DT, digital twin use cases, one thing we're trying to encourage, and from Onuma's perspective, we started inserting some of the tools that we use, but we want others to actually insert their use cases and tools into this. So for example, if we go on back to GIS, there are many owners, almost every single owner has some kind of a GIS system. And we're saying, how can GIS tie to BIM and tie to assets? So we're starting to share resources and actual tools that are being used and connections. That's the BIM storm is about, not only presenting, but also showing some live examples that become more concrete, rather than just saying in concept, well, this would be nice to have in the future. We're trying to zoom ahead and show what's possible, what's the myth, what's the reality, and then how can other systems link into each other and start to show value. So for example, CDV Systems is focused on BIM and harvesting BIM data that goes back into operations and maintenance, and how does that wiring happen as you start working throughout all this. If you zoom back, all seems very complex, but there's different user interfaces throughout all these apps now that the public is starting to expect to be easier to get to and use. Any thoughts on that? I'll kind of pause there and kind of.
Kimon, I do. It's something that Marc brought up and you mentioned also. Can you zoom out to show as much as possible? Because when you show that the center, that assets is one of the element, that's great to include assets, but asset management is what allows an organization to make sense of the complexity that is being presented. So we see asset management as the overlay on all of this because it provides governance. And when you have this level of complexity, you've got to have your mission tight. You've got to have everybody understanding the mission. That's the second thing. Involve all relevant stakeholders. And the last item on the to-do list of ISO 55001 is continual improvement. And what this does is allow people to explore how they can continually improve without making mistakes on a real project. It's what BIMstorm has always been about. And we're really happy to show how this fits in there. And this is great. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great. That's perfect, Mike. Actually, I left this whole section blank to get ALN to fill it in for us. And I know that these things were important, but we do that in BIMstorm quite a bit where we say, well, what do you think of this? Is this right or wrong? Go ahead. And
Okay,
just jot it down.
Marty, we'll talk after this conference and or after this call, and we're going to start filling this in.
Yeah, there you go. It's a challenge to the ALN
Yes.
members because we all don't know everything. That's the other important thing. Nobody knows everything. There's no single tool or application or no single digital twin that's going to solve everything, which is also another myth. A digital twin is not one thing. It's a system of systems, which means these systems need to be able to talk to each other, which means we need everything that you talked about, the governance, the mission-driven thing, and all of that. So there's a lot to this mural, but I'm not going to go into the details. But one thing we're trying to one of the outputs from this, we want to get a conclusion at the end of the BI session and have a paper that gets published out from this, the results. And we're trying to also capture even business processes into this as well too. So conceptually, for example, I started a simple model down here. It says, how do we make all this useful? Well, the first thing is we need to make information machine readable. If it's stuck in our heads, or in PDF files, or in a drive somewhere, it's not useful. It's only useful to that one user, right? Make it accessible, secure it, decouple it from the applications, make them neutral with open standards, share it, get the public perception and governance and ISO rules driving the use cases, connect the systems, enable digital twins to make them useful for humans and for AI. So any more thoughts about that would be great as you guys participate in this BIMstorm.
I think a lot of things you just said there, Kimon. My multiple hats that I wear include, like I said, the Digital Twin Consortium. We're working in a couple of groups there, and shared a sort of a pre-published version of the paper, and the concept of system of systems and the concept of use cases, and that there is no one tool that delivers a complete digital twin, and you don't try to, I hate the term, but I'll use it, boil the ocean, but you solve the problem that's in front of you that a digital twin can address. I mean, these are becoming standard thoughts amongst those who are immersed in the concept of digital twin. So I think that our position paper is going to document and state what is slowly becoming perhaps the obvious around digital twins, but is so important because there is a lot of noise out there. There are still a lot of myths. There's a bit of the Gartner hype curve that has sort of followed the emergence of digital twins. But I'm excited for the fact that the paper we've been working on for a year, the BIMstorm that you're initiating here, the Digital Twin Consortium and NIBS and other organizations seem to be sort of coalescing around some concepts and ideas. So it'll be a great time. I'm excited what Roger said earlier as far as inviting people to BI, and hopefully some of the listeners here will be able to join and participate in person.
Definitely.
Excellent. Scott, do you want to join in for any final comments? And then we'll let Marc and Kimon comment too.
I think the engagement that I see through ALN is very good. I'm excited to actually have a couple of follow-ups here. And I think that question about what is slowly becoming obvious that Marc just brought up, our goal is to make it formal, right? And so really happy to be a part of that conversation, and looking forward to the future. So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Scott. Marc, you made some nice comments there about wanting to meet people in person, but is there anything else you want to
Yeah, maybe it's worth mentioning. So yes, Scott as the lead chair of this project for the last year, myself as a vice chair, Zara, who's I know is on the caller, was as well as a vice chair, Kimon, Ali Barani, very active, leading two of the groups, two of the working groups, and about 20 to 50 people throughout the year contributing to the effort, to the conversations, to the debates, to the exposing content that's leading to this position paper, has really been a who's who of experts, and a very formal process, so that we're releasing more than just another opinion paper around digital twins, but something that really should be, like Scott said, formalized, and become a really strong starting point for those who are exploring digital twins. This has been a great effort, and again, really looking forward to BI as a place to release the paper and start getting the word out.
Yeah, that's great.
That leaves you with the final words.
Oh, thanks for hosting this and organizing this, and I think I look forward to getting engagement and participation, even at a minimal level, but the more you can jump in, the better. It's going to be going on up until BI and beyond that as well too, like we talked about on the schedule. We put a link in the chat for the BIMstorm site to sign up to get engaged with the effort, and stay tuned.
Yeah, excellent. We will be doing another program on the 16th, an ALN Thursday at 3. And we've got 2 weeks to figure out exactly what it is we're going to be doing. And people can contact the Asset Leadership Network directly, or sign up like Kimon indicated. And then there's the live event on the Friday, the 24th. And that means that there's a Thursday before that. Maybe we can do a live from NIBS ALN Thursday at 3, but I'm not putting any pressure on anybody yet. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Yeah.
So thank you all for attending. Appreciate your interest, and we will see you next week, and hopefully again on the 16th too.
Thank you.
Join us then.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Oh.
Bye.
Thanks to all the panelists and all the attendees. Forgot to thank the panelists. It was really excellent having you on, Scott and Mark.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Simone.
Thanks.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.